You were talking about dynasties for Freo. They're not talking dynasties, are they? The Purple Dynasty?
Oh, yeah, they are. I think it's fair to say they've got one foot in a GF. That might be a little bit presumptuous. I don't know. And I'm not saying he's going to do exactly what Nat Fyfe did, Willem Duursma, but I get Nat Fyfe vibes. This list was in an absolute shambles when Adam Simpson left the football club.
I thought you were going to say something else.
It was a mess. Certainly Fremantle, if they were to win the flag this year, it would go down, I think, in the top 5 moments in this stage.
Well, hi there. My name's Mark Stevens and welcome to Zero Hanger HQ for another episode of The Outer Wing, brought to you by TABtouch. Real punters play here. I'll be joined by the great Digby Beacham over in Perth, the best tuno going around. Let's get on with it. Well, g'day Diggers. What's the vibe like over West after a couple of pretty good performances by both teams?
Yeah, very much, Steve. Great to chat again. Look, a lot of excitement over here, as you can expect, I dare say, from your neck of the woods, given what Fremantle were able to produce. West Coast against the Bulldogs. Your Bulldogs were good. They just came up short, but all in all, they were pretty sound. Certainly an improvement, but the talk of the town, very much Fremantle. They were just breathtaking, I thought, in that second half.
Yeah, that was amazing, wasn't it? When you look back on it, so many missed shots. They had plenty of the footy. Sydney were exhilarating, but do you think this is the biggest warning of all, just the fact that they put the foot down? It was a real powerhouse performance.
Very much so, Steve-O, and maybe you're better placed in this respect because we live in a bubble over here and we're very excited about Fremantle and what they could potentially do over the next 2 months. And I'm not sure how they're being assessed over there on the East Coast. You see a few of these talk shows. I see what you do with Half every Monday morning, and I really enjoy that. But from our perspective, they can't have been any more impressive this year. You know, they had 2 losses. They lost to Geelong when there were genuine excuses, I felt, and they were bad against GWS, and they lost by 21 points. They kicked 100 points in 60 minutes of football against the second best side in the competition. This was a top of the table showdown, and I thought they made Sydney look very mediocre when the game was there to be won. Sydney led by 2 points with just over 11 minutes to go. Led by 2 points, Steve-O. They got beaten by 38. Had 36 scoring shots, Fremantle. It was awesome.
And Sydney got a goal on the siren too, which flattered them in the end. So they were lucky to get one at the end. But, gee, the coach, Longmuir, showed some anger, didn't he? Almost busted one of those phones. And, yeah, my only concern would be the goal kicking. It can happen with Freo, just runs of behinds. Seems to be a historical thing. Diggers, is that still a worry?
Well, they need to take their chances, Steve-O. You bang on there because there have been a few occasions this year when the radar hasn't been working, and that was the case again. I can't recall a side having 11 behinds at halftime of a game of football, certainly a side of Fremantle's standing. But once they got it right, the manner in which they can move the football, and I love the fact that they score heavily, Steve-O, and they score in clumps. A lot of these good sides, you've seen it, these premiership sides, their ability to go bang, 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 and all of a sudden the game's just turned. And that's what Fremantle have done on more than one occasion, and we've seen it against some of the best over here. Now, they beat Brisbane in Brisbane when Brisbane were going poorly, but they've seen Hawthorn's best over here. I reckon Geelong, as much as they were missing a couple, they were pretty good, but they saw their best and then they delivered the knockout blow to them, and then they did the same again to Sydney on last Thursday. So I think they're 9 for 9 here now. They're not going to lose a game at home in the regular season, you wouldn't think, and I pity the side that has to come here and play them in a qualifying final.
Oh, definitely. I think you could see it turn late in the second quarter. Sydney's just sort of held out there. Freo should have kicked a goal or two there late. But it was an amazing performance. So just give us a vibe on what's happening. Are people already looking at flights? Are they looking at mates to try and get guest passes into the MCC or do anything to get into the grand final? Now, we have a young bloke here at HQ, Hangar HQ, who has already got his ticket sorted. He's got a mate who said, if we're in, you're in.
Well, to be fair, Steve, the Fremantle fans have been looking at booking grand final tickets for about 2 months now, so not putting the cart before the horse much. But look, they're very excited. Look, it's only been the one occasion where Fremantle have got to a grand final, and they weren't disgraced on that occasion. Again, goal kicking was an issue that afternoon against Hawthorn, but Look, they're doing a lot of things right, Fremantle, and I think it's fair to say they've got one foot in a GF. That might be a little bit presumptuous, I don't know. But as I said, I can't see them losing a game in the home and away season at home, and that's going to leave them on top. They'll get the fourth place side. Now, we spoke last week whether it would potentially be Brisbane. Will Brisbane slide up into third? That's a possibility for mine, so they avoid them then. Early in the finals campaign, but gee whiz, it's going to take something, I think, a little bit outside the box for Fremantle to fall over at home.
Have you had a look at the website, Stickers? The cost to get is it already inflated to sort of fly out on a Tuesday?
Flights are expensive. Not for me. I'm not a Fremantle person, but the flights are expensive. I've been told there's been a lot of media about how the ticket prices, have been gouged, and hotels and accommodation, everything like that. It's being dissected to an inch of its life over here in WA.
Now, in our planning meeting, Diggers, which is a long one, extensive planning as we do each week, you were talking about dynasties for Freo. They're not talking dynasties, are they? The Purple Dynasty?
Oh, yeah, they are. They are. And look, they have to win one first, but I think they're ahead of schedule, Steve-O. But by my counting, and I'm not very good at maths, I was terrible at maths, I think there's only 2 players over the age of 30 on this Fremantle list. Like, this side is very much built, and it's a pure build. That's the beauty of it. There's no father-sons. There's no hand-me-outs here. They've just done it through shrewd recruiting and great development. But you look at these key forwards, Steve-O, like Tracy, Amos and Voss, they're pups. They're 22, 23 years of age. Like, they should be not even at their peak yet, which is frightening. Shea Bolton's mid to late 20s, as is Sarong. Jackson's young. Brayshaw, defensively, Geordie Clark and the like. So I think it's Alex Pearce and Luke Ryan who might be over 30. The rest sub 30. Fremantle's built to be a force for the next 5 to 6 years.
Oh, no doubt. All they need probably is another key defender or two, younger key defenders to come in. I think if you take Pearce out, to me, they're a bit wobbly. Ryan and Cox are B grade at best, wobbly type operators at times. But Pearce, sensational, but he's getting older. But it'd be great to see him rewarded because he's been outstanding, really servant of the Freo Footy Club, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. And he went to some dark places by his own admission, Alex, when, early in his career with the busted legs and just couldn't get healthy. But he's fought his way back. And in terms of that football club as a leader, like, they've had some great ones. Don't get me wrong. They've had some beauties. You talk of Fife and Pavlich. David Mundy was captain for a year, but Alex Pearce, I'm not saying he's better than them, but he is much loved and he is so respected inside the locker room. And one thing with Alex, he doesn't give the impression that he's a volatile figure. By any means, he's not that. But he can look down the barrel and he can look in the eyes of his teammates and ask for an effort and they respond. The respect with which he's held, it is elite.
Yeah, I don't think he's got the silk of, say, a Pavlich or the class of Fife, but I think he, as an inspirational, harder at the pill than both of those guys, and that's saying a lot. I mean, the way he puts his body on the line and just cuts everything off, he is an inspiration, the man from Tassie. Now, Diggers, I'm just looking at this game, and everything's falling Freo's way. Right. Port Adelaide, they're very limited list talent-wise, and then they've got their top end out. This could be anything.
Yeah, and the weather's meant to be nice enough on Saturday, early Saturday afternoon there in Adelaide, so just a mild winter's afternoon. And you're right, Steve, no Butters, Georgiades, we know they're missing Rosie already. Like, they could not get them at a better time.
And Horn Francis.
And it was always going to be a game. I wonder how they'll go in this one because it was off the back of the Sydney game. They lost the GWS in their last trip away and thought, this will be interesting. But not now. I think Port will be doing well to get within 6 or 7 goals of Fremantle. Arrested, wow. It should be a very, very comfortable victory for Fremantle.
You're being generous there. If you look at Port with those players out, I'm not sure they'll get more than 30 inside 50s. They're going to struggle to get the ball in their forward line. So I think 6 or 7's being generous. I'd set the line at this game at about 66. That'll be interesting. I'm not sure what that is, Diggers, but that's going to be a blowout. The Dockers are flying and you're gushing, Diggers. So that's Freo for this week. Now on to West Coast, and I sat there on Sunday afternoon off Broadway, 3-ish start, off Broadway umpires, 25,000 people there. It was a scrap fest, but I did emerge really impressed with West Coast. They were very organised, clean in the way they went about it. If they'd kicked a bit straighter, I mean, they're 14 points up midway through the third when Duursma ripped through the middle there. I think there's a lot building there now. I'm on board with the coach and the way that they just seem to have a plan. And the Bulldogs played this sort of typical chaotic brand. They at times you wonder what the Dogs' plan is. They just sort of go for it. But you could see what West Coast was trying to do. They were moving the ball nicely around the ground, and backline held up pretty well. So in the end, they were pretty stiff not to get it done.
I'm glad to hear you say that, Stephen. I heard you talk about this with Half earlier in the week, and because you're seeing what I see, and I'm sure a lot of other people see, and maybe we have the blinkers on over here, and there's been occasions where I've been glass half full with West Coast, and I think I've advocated for the extension of Andrew at West Coast, and others have said, no, wait, which is fine. He is contracted until the end of 2027. And then you see some of the performances they've turned in of late, and you go, oh, gee, maybe I'm off the mark here. But what they have done, when they have gone interstate on a couple of occasions this year, they've been poor, but on other occasions they've been pretty good. We know they were very good against Collingwood in that Scott Pendlebury milestone game, and they led by 14 points in that third quarter against your boys after Duursma kicked that goal, Steve-O, and you thought, oh, hello, are we going to witness something that we did not expect, did not forecast? But then the Bulldogs, with their experience and their class, Bont, Norton, Richards, were able to come to the fore. But I know it's a long road, and they're coming from a long way back, West Coast, but I do think they are out the other side, and it sounds like you feel the same way.
Oh, definitely. You can see, some defensive moments there that they had were great. They held up well. Harley Reid was pretty solid, didn't do anything silly. And it was great, as I mentioned earlier in the week, that Harley had a long chat to Libba after the match. And you could see the mutual respect there for Harley, for Libba, who's a much-loved player. So I just think they're coming, and if Harley Reid had snagged a couple more, he had chances, then they would have won. I thought Shanahan marked the ball well again, sort of drifted out of the game at times, but he's a young player. And there were probably signs of life for Starcevic too, Diggers, who I've been a bit sort of umming and ahhing about, to be honest, about the worth of picking him up.
Yeah, look, I think with Brandon also, he's coming from a long way back, given he had a grumbly calf, which, effectively ruled him out until the halfway point of the season. So he's getting familiar with his teammates, his new teammates. They've had some really poor luck on the injury front. Devon Robertson's not a star by any means, but he was brought into this midfield, one, because he's just got a wonderful work rate. He's a superhuman being, and he also knows how to play at this level, and he blew his knee out. Harry Edwards is part of that back six, but for these ongoing concussion issues, which have ended his season. So all in all, they've been able to assemble some good kids. You mentioned Shanahan, you've mentioned Duursma. Reid's still very much on the way up. His combative nature is good. Bailey Williams continues to play good football. Some of their senior boys were a bit better on the weekend. I was critical of them 7 days ago. But look, I think another pre-season into these kids, they're going to be okay. Josh Lindsay's one who I've got a bit of time for as well, Steve-O. So they're building. They are building, West Coast.
Now, I reckon this is a reasonably easy question after watching the game on the weekend. If you had to pick a player for the next 10 years, Duursma or Shanahan?
I'll pick Duursma, but I don't think it's on. Are you thinking Duursma as well, Steve-O? Would you be, or Shanahan?
I reckon Duursma's 5 or 6 lengths in front at this stage.
Do you?
You saw what he did out of the middle there. I think we need to see how he develops. Now, how do I say it? The Duursma family at times, some of the other Duursmas have been disappointing. So I think he's a different level. And I'll back him in as much as I love Shanahan. He's a little bit of a mark and kick player, Shanahan. So I think he can get better off the ground and maybe, become more capable of a snap or two or more second efforts. Would you agree with that? He's an old-fashioned mark and kick player, which is fine. But if he gets another string to his bow, he may be closer to Duursma.
Duursma, yeah, they're both rippers for mine. Look, I'll go Duursma, and I'm not saying he's going to do exactly what Nat Fyfe did, Willem Duursma, but I get Nat Fife vibes about Willem Duursma, that rangy, scopy, great reach, great stretch about him. He covers the ground. He's 191. He's averaging 18 possessions a game, Willem Duursma. He's played 16 of 17 in his first year in a side that has had its ups, but it's had more downs than ups. So all in all, and you saw what he did on the weekend when he was injected into the centre square. So he's a marking machine. He's got a big tank. He's only going to get better. I must admit, I'm a fan of Shanahan. He's kicked 35 goals in 26 games. He's kicked 23 goals this year, Job Shanahan. And to be fair, the back half of his year has been pretty solid. I think he's kicked 9 goals in his last 4 games, 13 in his past 7. He's kicked 23 for the year in a side which is battle, and he's still only 19 in his second year as a key forward. So I think there's enormous upside with him, as there is with Willem Duursma. And if West Coast are to climb to the summit again, these two men need to be at the forefront of that climb.
Yeah, I think Shanahan, when you look at him, Diggers, is almost a perfect cutout of a key position forward. Everything, if you just went to AI and whatever, give me a key position forward, what you want them to look like, that's the perfect body, the perfect build at 19.
He's going to be a big boy, Steve-O, isn't he? You can see the shape and the guns at the moment. And, we see, every week we watch Josh Tracy so closely, and you look at Jai Amos and how he's developed and evolved into a man. Like, he's a real man now. And those Fremantle key forwards, Voss, Tracy and Amos, they're big boppers. And I suspect that Job Shanahan, with another 2 seasons of weights under his belt over the pre-seasons, in 2028-29, you're going to be looking at quite an imposing young key forward.
So what do you think this week against the Lions? Lions sort of went to sleep at the end. Essendon kicked 7 or 8 on them in the last quarter. You can take that out of the equation. I just think if West Coast come with this intent that they could be competitive for a half, Brisbane will be happy with themselves, as they should be. But teams, what can happen, Diggers? There's a lot of positivity about the Lions. They might go over there sort of at 7.5 out of 10 intensity and get caught out early.
They might. I suspect if they come with 7.5 out of 10 intensity, that will still be sufficient. Look, West Coast at home need to be a lot better than they were a couple of weeks ago, but there's a lot of rain forecast here in Perth. It's meant to be easing off on Sunday, but it could be quite slippery and wet, that ground on the weekend. So I think Brisbane win by 7 or 8 goals, to be fair, Steve-O. I think for mine, they're the second best team in the competition, Brisbane. So I expect them to come over here and do a job and do a comfortable job on West Coast.
Yeah, I think they'll win, but maybe not by that much. I'm now with you on Mini McWalter. I think we'll wait and see the next 6 weeks. If it's positive and they track and they play like they did against the Dogs, I can see no reason why early next season perhaps give him a 2-year extension. I think you can just see signs of life there, and you can see what he's doing. Other clubs at times you don't really know what their plan is, Diggers. Like, what's Essendon's plan at the moment? Well, you can see it with West Coast.
So what do you do with him, or what does he do you think, for the back end of this season then, Steve-O, with a view to they've won the 4 games, which is a considerable improvement on last year. Do you keep throwing big assignments to these kids if they're physically and mentally capable of handling that, with a view to fast-tracking their development, or do you coach for the now and try to win 1 or 2 more?
I think he has to coach for the now. They're good enough at the moment to play for the now. Forget about tampering and with and experimenting with young players. Just play your best side. And I think maybe Duursma should have spent more time, in the guts on the weekend. So it was a winnable game. Really, they should have gone home disappointed, West Coast. I hope they were, because they probably let that one slip. So if they're going with that mindset, I reckon they can win 1 or 2 more, and then Mini-Me gets an extension.
Yeah, I hope he does, because as I said, this list was in an absolute shambles when Adam Simpson left the football club.
I thought you were going to say something else.
It was a mess.
It was Shizen.
Sorry?
It was Shizen.
Horrible, Steve. It was just about beyond repair. And the last couple of years of Adam Simpson's reign, the club became shambolic and submissive. It was a very weak football club. It's now starting to come out of that funk.
Okay, Diggers. Well, that's the Eagles.
Could a mullet with tightly tapered sides reduce wind resistance, allowing for faster acceleration off the mark? Now that's something to think about. What are you really gambling with?
Now, what about the news, Diggers' news? I've been on Cox all year, a big cocker, and I think he's just an integral part now of the team. Unless there's an injury, does Darcy get back in?
It's a really good question, Steve. You've been backing the Mason Cox horse. I've been backing the Sean Darcy horse. I'm a little bit more in your corner now than I was 7 days ago. I thought he had some really good moments again against Sydney. And to be fair, Mason, he's played 10 games this year and he's been part of 10 wins. And he's had good moments in all of them, Steve. Look, I think selection this week is going to be absolutely fascinating because there's no Peel Thunder in action, so that's Fremantle's reserve side over here this weekend. So Sean Darcy was managed last week. Do they recall him now and give him an opportunity to play in Adelaide with the Derby on the horizon, or do they go again with Mason Cox? I suspect this Thursday's selection and when the teams drop will give you a really good guide as to what the Fremantle match committee is thinking as to who is the best deputy to Luke Jackson.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating. I don't think you can drop Mason Cox after the weekend. And as you said, he's a winning player. He hasn't played in a loss yet. He's part of the winning formula. And when I look at Cox, I won't say it's career best form, but it's close to it. He looks fitter, sharper. His hands are even better than they were at Collingwood. So he's found something, the big cocker.
Yeah, he has, Steve. I mean, look, he hasn't played he didn't play any football in his early years. So maybe that's been able or been something that's been a massive assistance to him in his body because he's mid-30s, but he doesn't get around like that. He's, he hasn't been overtaxed. Physically, he's in a great place, loves living in Western Australia. He really enjoys the sunshine over here, loves the Fremantle way of life. So there's a lot to like about Mason Cox. And as I said, he's a factor at the centre throw-ups and the stoppages. And when he does push forward, he's able to get his hands on it and he can convert. So Sean Darcy has some work to do, no doubt about that.
Okay, now, Diggers, this is the highlight of the whole show. Diggers' list, we've had to think about it this week. We're just thinking if Freo gets up this year, will it be the biggest story in WA, Australian rules football history? So, look, maybe give us your top 5 at the moment on what you think 5-1 of the biggest stories in the history of WA footy. And then at the end, if the Dockers get up, where would they squeeze in?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Steve. Look, I think they would fit somewhere in the top 5. I don't think they're at the top. I would say, if you were to say do a 5, I would say that the State of Origin, WA beating Victoria by 90-odd points in late 1977, and the concept, it basically put on the radar the fact that, WA had a lot of wonderful, talented Australian rules football players going about their business. Some were here, some were over there in Victoria in the VFL. But we saw the reintroduction of State of Origin football earlier this year here in Perth with WA up against the Big V, and you only have to go back to 1977 to see the launch of it, and that in this state is really, really significant. So that goes as one of them. I think if you were to, when I'm doing this list, Steve, I didn't sort of individualise. I've looked as a collective. So the West Coast rise and fall. So effectively from 05 to 10. 05, we know that there was obviously Brownlows. West Coast played in a grand final against Sydney. 06, they win it, and then there's the drug saga and, the fact that in the wake of that, there was massive fallout, massive headlines. It was a bizarre time here in WA, Steve-o, covering football back then on the beat. It was bizarre. Private investigators were being used to try and find where Ben Cousins was, and we know that Ben was then deregistered by the league. And
Did
West
they put
Coast
out the investigators on the journos too at that era? Diggers?
No. No, well, I don't think so. But there was so much going on. You know that, Steve-o. And then West Coast, they cleaned house. Judd left. And then in 2010, they finished last. They got the wooden spoon. So it was a dramatic fall from grace. So that era, it was something to behold. I'd then go back to West Coast winning a flag, 92. It was the first time the Premiership Cup had been outside Victoria, and Mick Moldhouse built this super side along with Trevor Nisbet. Brian Cook was the CEO at the time. They became a mighty force, and alongside North Melbourne with a team of the 90s. You go back, I think the biggest story here, and somewhere Fremantle fit in this, but the biggest story in this state in Australian rules football history is West Coast being granted a licence in late 1986 to come into the then VFL in 87. Changed the landscape. They were able to lure back some wonderful players. Ross Glendenning came back to be the inaugural skipper. I think they only had a 32-man squad, Steve-O. That's all they were allowed back in 1987. They got their licence in, I think, October of 86. So... and football as it's known here in this state, and I dare say as it's known throughout the country, changed forever back there in the late 1980s.
Yeah, that was an exciting time. There's a couple of things stiff there. I reckon Danny Southern's headlock on Summer.
Peter Sumich.
That had to go close. That was historic. Hip and shoulder from Stevie Wallace on Brett Heady, and then Summer, the lights out there for a moment. So.
Well, Earl Spalding nearly killed Guy McKenna, I think, at Subi Oval too one day. So, look, there's been some great moments. And look, Nat Fyfe, dual Brownlow medalist. Chris Judd's arrival into Perth was much trumpeted, and you can understand why. Fremantle granting a licence, their first derby, the Mother's Day Massacre against West Coast in early May 1995. There's been a lot to like. It's a very rich Australian rules state, this one here in WA, but certainly Fremantle, if they were to win the flag this year, it would go down, I think, in the top 5 moments in this state.
Yeah, I'd have it at number 2 probably, because nobody really thought it would ever happen, and it may still not happen, but it'd just be huge, wouldn't it, if they got up? I think it'd be number 2 behind. What about Kickett and that big blue? Was that Dale Kickett there that cut loose?
The Demolition Derby. Yeah, the Demolition Derby when both sides went hell for leather. Michael Gardner was sparring with Matthew Pavlich in the goal square, and Phil Reid and Dale Kickett and Andrew Embley. There was a bit going on that afternoon, Steve.
Always plenty going on. TABtouch, Real Punters Play here. Gamble responsibly, of course. But Diggers, give us a couple of tips for this weekend.
Well, I like Michael Frederick back home in South Australia to kick 2+ goals. He's in pretty good nick, Michael, and he's capable of kicking multiple goals. So $2.95 with TABtouch for Michael to kick 2+ goals against Port Adelaide on a Saturday afternoon. Move. And then we'll go to the game featuring Brisbane and West Coast. I'm thinking Charlie Cameron and Zach Bailey can kick 2+ goals also. And for that to occur in a same game multi with TABtouch, Steve-O, you can get $2.70.
Both good bets. Even in the wet diggers, you think that they'll snag a couple of those guys?
I think they're going to see a fair bit of football, those Brisbane forwards, Steve-O.
Yeah, I reckon Frederick might even get 4 goals plus. There's going to be that much supply. He'll get off the chain, get a few out the back. That's going to be a blowout. So, love your work, Diggers. Some of those old stories. I'd love to hear some old journo stories at some stage too. We'll get around to that at another episode. So, thanks for joining the Outer Wing again, brought to you by TABtouch. Real Punters Play here. We'll see you next week.
You win some, you lose more. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.